In this lesson, we'll take a look at creating another graphic element to complement our exploding letters. So we have the letters that sort of exploding out. I want to create sort of spikes coming out of here. So one of the ways we can do this is to use this extrude node here. So let's go ahead and add a sphere to our scene. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in a sphere. And I want to be able to see the wire. So right now it's just a basic sphere, and you can see the type is set to standard. Let's go ahead and dial down the segments. So I'm going to set this down to maybe something like 12, and I also want to change the type. So I'm going to change it to maybe an octahedron, so we've got these triangles all across the surface, and I want it to be fairly low resolution, so maybe 10 or 12 as far as the segments go. So once I've got that, I can go ahead and make that editable, and then I want to place it into the center of my sphere of letters here. So let's go ahead and sort of put it in the middle somewhere. And it doesn't have to be exact, but I just want to kind of place it generally within the sphere here. Okay. Now what I want to happen is as these letters explode, I want these spikes to sort of shoot out. And we can do this using our extrude. We can extrude those off. So the polygons off. So let's go ahead and add our extrude. And to make this work with our sphere, we need to drop it underneath the sphere. Okay. And let me turn off the exploding letters for a second. So we can see what's happening here. If we go ahead and select our extrude, you can see that it's actually pulling those polygons off the surface. And if I increase this Z amount, you can see even more those polygons getting extruded off. Now the number of divisions is defined here under Object by steps. So you can increase or decrease the number of steps. Under transform, if you change X or Y, you can see it starts to sort of rotate and change the look of this. So we'll go ahead and leave the value here under Z. Okay. Now we can start to animate this. So let's turn the letters back on. So here at frame 4, let's define how we want this to look. So I want the sphere to be a bit smaller. Okay. So something like that. So we'll scale it down. And then for the extrude, I'm going to go ahead and select extrude, and I want to pull these out, so maybe something like that. And I can go ahead and key that value in the Z. And then as it expands, I'll go ahead and go all the way to frame 150, and I can go ahead and expand that a little bit more as well. So it sort of expands with the letters, and you can play through that and see that it sort of expand there. And if we go down to frame 0, I can go ahead and take this value down and go ahead and key that and have it expand out with the letters. Okay. Now if you want to actually turn off the sphere, the visibility, you can do that too by going to Sphere, and under the Basic tab, we can change this Visible in Editor to off, Editor and Renderer, and then at frame, let's say frame 2, we can go ahead and turn it back on. And that'll expand out with our letters. Now I want to randomize that a little bit, so let's go ahead and add a random effector. Okay, and under extrude, I want to make sure that I add it in. Now you can see the randomization is affecting it in a direction that we don't necessarily want, and so we'll go ahead and take out the value in the X. Let's take out the value in the Y. Okay, and then we can kind of dial in our value here. So let's go ahead and add that to maybe, just so we get a little bit more variation on this, maybe 85. Okay. And then we can see what that looks like. So at frame 4, get that random look the way that we want it. So maybe something like that. Okay. And then maybe at frame 0, I can turn it off. Okay, let's step back a minute and play this. So we'll go back to our camera, our shot camera. So we've got all of these letters here, and then we've got this sort of spiky ball. So it sort of explodes, and then it sort of continues to expand a little bit as we go and create the rest of our look. Okay, so that's one way that we can add these sort of graphic elements, is using this extrude, which will extrude the polygons of our sphere. Okay, and again, we can also use this on a selection. So if you have just a certain part of your object that you want to expand or extrude, you can do it that way as well. Okay, and so if you want to, you can go ahead and drop this under the exploding letters, null, so that now that's part of the same group there. So now that we've got that done, and then we've got also our background letters, the next thing that we want to do is to go ahead and I want to create this sort of a sweep or spline that comes out and around and back across the front of our camera. So we'll go ahead and start to set that up in the next lesson.